Welcome back to our second session. This is the one before lunch. Hopefully everyone in the room and online has enough fuel to keep going, because this is a fantastic session all about data governance in the creative sector, which is a lot more interesting than I've managed to make it sound in the title. We are welcoming to the stage CraftDash, Tollivar and Jesse James, and I'd like to invite Jesse up first to take us through Museum AI. Give a big hand to Jesse, everyone.
Brilliant. Hi, I'm Jesse. I run a creative agency that works predominantly with cultural institutions, but also creative tech brands as well. Large part of my background is more towards marketing and working with people and audiences, and then bringing digital into that equation. I used to work for the Tate Gallery, Serpentine, and now work with many different brands, predominantly blockchain, and then evolved into AI like you do. And a big part of this project, Museum AI, this is a case study, was how to get museums to talk together. It's even though it's a non-for-profit sector, very competitive museums at the moment, especially when it comes to innovation and creativity. Whereas AI presented a really interesting opportunity to, which is all based around the user, to bring collections together, program together, a wealth of content, all this creative data. So for me, this is very much a new era of online cultural engagement. Social media was probably the first wave where creative brands could then suddenly start talking to people about artists and artworks and exhibitions. Whereas AI presents something where people can go on discoveries, go down rabbit holes. You could look at an artist and their work across thousands of different collections through millions of artworks. We're working with 3 partners at the moment on this project. This is the Hepworth Wakefield, which is an iconic museum up in Yorkshire, which is, that whole area of Yorkshire is slowly becoming rapidly becoming a very creative hub at the moment. This is very much to do with ethical AI. So I've worked for the last couple of years very much on creative ownership and provenance and authenticity of what we see in the news that could be generated by AI, but also copyright as well. And this is kind of, this is one side of what I do and trying to monetize creative works. Well, on the other side, it's how can we embrace AI for the better. So this is very much almost developing our own AI system specifically for museums. So a sovereign museum AI, you could say. And it's really, like I was saying here, it's really redefining how audiences discover and talk to collections online. And the whole point of this project is to go from 3 partners to scale across the UK and bring in museums internationally together. So the other partners are the Tate Gallery, which I'm sure you might have heard of, which is 4 galleries in the UK, all across the UK, Liverpool to Cornwall and 2 in London. The Fitzwilliam Museum, which is part of Cambridge, the University of Cambridge. They've all got different aspirations and goals for working with AI. Hepworth is very much about bringing institutions, artists, millions of data sets together into one place. The Tate are very interested in public interaction and how people can discover artists. They've got 90,000 works of art. Only 3% is on show. We can walk into the gallery and see it, only 3%. And online, people only scrape the surface. They're only going for the Picassos, the Warhols. They're really famous, but they want to surface all that art and artworks that, like the 97% of people don't see. And so role of AI is really important. Fitzwilliam Cambridge, they also want to kind of level, it's more to bias, in terms of bringing artists, kind of correcting the way the collection has changed and adapted over 200 years. And so they're very interested in how they can use AI to kind of correct and update the story of their collection. So a few shots of the different, this is the Hepworth, so Fitzwilliam. So the vision behind this is to very much get the public to move from static search, where you're currently having to go, when you hit a museum website, you go through many, many different pages to find out what you want, whether it's, is there a kid still in the cafe at the museum versus you're looking for a deep academic paper on a particular subject versus you want to find out what's going on within museums in the area. So we want to really champion conversation where, you know, the museums talk back at you. We also want to go from isolated websites, so hundreds and thousands of different museum websites, and consolidate all that information into one place. The most important thing here is how museums have ownership over their own data. I'll talk a bit more about that in a second, but where they can see what people are prompting and questioning. You know, currently that information is very much hidden and run by commercial frontier models. So we want to bring that back into the museum sector. So they are the owners of content that gets published and trained on. You know, they have obviously millions and millions of collections, which equal a very large segment of training data. The goal at what we're doing at the moment is launching 3 pilot AI assistants across the 3 different museums. All these museums, their AI agents are connected, so they speak to each other. So it's almost like you've got curators chatting to each other, searching collections to find the most relevant information across archive, collection, content. Museums produce a huge amount of editorial content, so blogs, podcasts, films, articles, PhDs, everything, it's all there. So the museums, the AI curators will talk amongst each other, and the idea behind that scales across the sector. Everything, we're looking at small language models, so it's bespoke to the sector as well, and it's trained on what we know is 100% trusted content because it's owned by the museum, it's their data sets. There's also curatorial authority, so they can manage the tone of voice in terms of how people discover. They can manage the provenance of the work as well, so you know that's, you know, it can't be contested because they owned it. And to go towards this natural language conversation is the goal. The pilot structure that we're working on at the moment is deploying the 3 assistants and then connecting them up as the second phase. We have a museum infrastructure that's powered by AI. And the third really exciting stage is then scaling that nationally across the UK and then internationally. So you've got a very powerful museum AI. Why are we doing this? Because audiences are, as we know, very much moving to mainstream AI, and search is changing into conversation. Website traffic has dropped by 30% to museum websites since September. People are wanting shortcuts. They're not going through to, we'll probably see this in the news industry at the moment with news publications, but they're not going to the museum websites necessarily because they've got all that information. So we're looking at ways to pull them through to museum websites and have a richer, better experience with museum AI. And also, we don't want museums to be followers of AI. We want them to be leaders of AI. We want them to own their own data. And so, you know, there's a bit of a championing the power of, you know, owning your own AI platform as well. Sustainability, so we mentioned about small language models, working with large language models, lower energy, lower costs, and also very, very bespoke to the cultural sector. It's very inclusive what we're doing as well with speech and audio, which just, you know, broadens massively the accessibility of how people engage with art and culture. And Fitzwilliam, very interested in this, the museum, bias aware, so being able to curate institute data that doesn't offend and, you know, and commission new content that also addresses gaps within the collection as well. So really helping the interpretation. Why museum AI is different? It's public facing as well. So it's very much to do with how the public are slowly adjusting to how they explore and find content. And, you know, museum AI is all about curiosity and going down the rabbit holes. Conversational discovery across institution is why we're doing it. Also this 24/7 visitor guide. Is it a researcher? Is it a curator? And also we want museums to have the power to, you know, have disclose access to audience insight as well, to see what people are searching for and building up really powerful audience insights above and beyond things like Google Analytics and so forth. And also, we want to promote the fact that AI can be much more environmentally effective in certain ways, such as small language models. So reflections on the talk, how it's been so helpful. The experiences, just hearing the presentations earlier, where there is so much, such a relationship between what we're doing within the cultural sector can apply to architecture and construction. Various conferences and events that I've been to as part of Bridge AI, like chatting over lunch. That's how I learned about small language models and about the potential behind that. The sessions, particularly obviously on copyright and provenance, have been really important. Museums are very much trusted organisations, and so that session on copyright and provenance was incredibly helpful. Informal discussions, like I was saying, led to the use of small language models. Ethics as well, the fact that museum AI must be built with the sector, not imposed on the creative industry, which is currently what's happening at the moment with the debate around copyright. So that's Museum AI. Where we're at the moment, we just had, we pitched, it's a non-for-profit initiative, but we had a big pitch with a very well-known tech company last Friday, which has gone very, very well. So they will hopefully come on board to put this into action so we can run our pilot. But a lot of thanks to the cohort, to help, because I'm not a tech mind at all. So this has really helped structure my thought and strategy, and it's led to potentially a very exciting partnership with a tech company. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jessie. Am I online? Yes. Thank you very much, Jessie. We do have a couple of questions for you online. First up, I love how your tool upgrades museum engagement. Have you considered the risk that it could replace in-person attendance, and how do you think you might mitigate that? So we're starting with a nice, easy softball question.
I mean, it will never replace the in-person experience. I mean, like over decades, people are watching Netflix at home is going to replace cinema. People coming together is the most important thing, and to be able to use AI or social media to learn more about what you're going to see or about art is only going to make you more confident. When you do meet people in person, you want to talk about culture or how it makes you feel. So it's just what's the phrase? A part in that whole kind of learning experience about culture.
Great, wonderful, thank you very much. And we have got quite a few questions for you. So hopefully if you are in the room, please do come and say hello to Jessie and ask questions if I don't get to them. But there's a number of different questions around, can you tell us what it is like working with museums? Historically, they can be somewhat conservative institutions. And you also have 3 museums there, each of which has very different, distinct, all interesting goals for what they'd like to do with this product. How are you finding integrating those into a single vision, or are you not trying to do that?
No, 100% trying to do that. Working with museums is at the moment very, very tricky because of various things. Footfall's really declined with a lot of museums at the moment. The cost of living. So museums are, the primary focus is to get people through the doors and sell tickets and do blockbuster shows. That innovation has taken a bit of a backseat. The idea behind AI is that you can, with this project, is that we can still innovate, but to do it, we need to come together as an industry. Like I was saying right at the beginning, museums have become suddenly very competitive because they need to get people through the door, and so they have become competitive. The relationship with Tate is very, very important because of the ideas that they support the 2 regional galleries, Fitzwilliam and Hepworth, which are much smaller. There is a common thread between them, is that they all are incredibly interested in public engagement and how that looks, but also Barbara Hepworth, which is the artist here, she's got a very big collection within the Tate and the Fitzwilliam as well, so they have an artistic connection as well, which I identified. So things like that help. It's like any relationship, you look for things that connect the dots, and then you kind of jump in there with the project.
Great, thank you very much, Jessie. We've got time for one quick question if there is someone in the room who wants to ask. There's a number of excellent questions online. We will definitely come back to you during the discussion round.
Yep.
Max has a question on the front row. A person in the teal jumper.
Hello.
Thanks.
How do you see your model or software, sorry, I'm not choosing the right words. How do you see that evolving over time? Maybe to also bring a focus to how they could, I don't know, create more evolving experiences within the infrastructure that is already existing of museums.
Yeah, totally. I think the audience dashboard with the insights, seeing what people are prompting and searching for, will help tailor the public program. Looking for gaps in knowledge, how excited people get behind particular public programs as well. So I think, working on what people are questioning through Museum AI and talking about is going to be incredibly useful. Scaling, we identified a particular tech partner that has a relationship with hundreds and hundreds of different organizations, cultural organizations around the world. So we want to walk through them to spread Museum AI as well. So we see that as a really important way to scale up. But it is a sandpit. It's also a bit of a sandpit idea. So we're waiting to see in what direction it goes as well. But the main point is that we want all institutions, very small and very large, to be working together and having the opportunity to work with AI to open up access to the collections. So, this isn't the Science Museum running ahead on their own doing one project. This is like, let's bring in all the smaller institutions, performance venues, theatres, arts organisations together to have access to this technology. So that's a big part of this.
Great. Thank you very much, Jesse. Please take a seat here and another round of applause.
Oh, cheers. Thanks.
Okay, next up to the stage, I'd like to welcome Ola Benga with CraftDash. Big round of applause for Ola Benga.
Everyone. So before I introduce myself, in 100 years, what will your culture look like? That's a food for thought for everyone, and especially in the digital world, where you have a whole lot of images popping up without being able to trace where it's coming from. When AI learns culture from the internet, what does it forget? So we have two images here, one generated by AI and the other generated, that's just the actual representation. And it talks more about about a particular culture, Yoruba culture in southwestern Nigeria, where two kings are greeting. And when we prompted a few generative AI platforms, this is what we have. So if you can look at those pictures and spot the difference, especially in terms of symbols. In terms of symbols, if I mean symbols, I mean staff of authority, the king's hat, and beads. You see the difference. Now, what it's all about is today we have generative AI systems training on synthetic data, billions of synthetic data online. And it means that governance, as we have it, was an afterthought. And that is why the first question that was asked, what's your culture going to be like in 100 years? Now, there are documented risks, especially by the independent expert group on AI and culture, risks like bias, cultural flattening, misrepresentation, and one of the risks is cultural homogenization, whereby the output of generative AI systems at over a period of time looks the same. At some point, that sameness becomes the norm. And when it becomes the norm, it becomes the acceptable norm used in classrooms, used by designers, used everywhere. So it means it might be plausible, but it might not be culturally correct or accurate. So why it matters economically, authenticity is real economic value. And we have looked at designers, so heritage institutions, educators, and how much they rely on accuracy of what they build or what they design or how they make use of these images. Also for startups and SMEs in the UK, our experience at the Alan Turing Institute and the Practitioners Hub over a period of time is, if we are looking at building in governance, building provenance into the upstream part of our product, how are we going to do it with a almost zero, I would say zero funding, and how are we still going to be able to capture those guardrails we are supposed to put in place when we know that governance shouldn't be an afterthought, but it should be priority. What we're building, so we are simply building a governance-led cultural AI system where the system can generate culturally accurate images which you and I can trace where it's coming from. And a whole lot of thoughts went into this. And our experience in the Alan Turing Institute had to get us back to the drawing board, especially going back to what we term as the data integrity. When I mean the upstream, it means if you miss it out, if you miss data governance out from the beginning, don't expect to get a generative AI output that is accurate. So what you feed in, ingest, is what you are going to get out of the system. Nothing in AI fails in isolation. So I've talked more about what we learned from the Practitioners Hub. As for me and my team, we had some of the sessions, and some of the sessions that were much more engaging and got us thinking and got us back to the drawing board was the data governance session, then more so the system thinking sessions and the stakeholder mapping. And what we've done is we've looked at how data integrity matters when it comes to governance, then how provenance builds trust in the users of the system. And also we've looked at creators, how content creators need to we get feedback. Rather, we get feedback from the cultural community. And so while we were doing and engaging in the Alan Turing Institute, we did the system mapping. And I remember the exercise we had. We actually went back to the drawing board and we mapped it across our AI product lifecycle. And we discovered a part we missed, which was the cultural community. They own the story. They own the history. If you build anything that is that represents them, maybe 80%, we still have to come to you. Our systems still have to come to you and tell you it came from a particular culture. It came from a particular community, and you can easily generate your image to be able to see the description, context, history of that particular culture. So how have we thrived in making sure we do not get discouraged on the setup of a whole lot of committees because we have a whole lot of things that goes on into data governance, especially when it comes to you have a whole lot of stakeholders within your AI product lifecycle. It is heavyweight, and the perception out there for startups is it's just meant for the big guys. And so we found a way to putting lightweight checkpoints, micro expert reviews, incremental data sets, template-based documentation. And when I mean lightweight checkpoints, we, in our AI lifecycle, we have briefs we do before we commence. Then after that, before the cultural contributors, they understand the context, they understand the environment, they understand, for instance, the attire, they understand if it comes from a particular either pre-colonial era or post-colonial era, so you can trace. And micro-expert reviews also means that we've put in these guardrails that even when we have our model sorted out, this is still reviewed against what it's supposed to produce before it gets to downstream. When it gets to the downstream, which is the output you see, it is too late at that point in time. And it's a big trust, it's against trust of the people you are serving, especially for creators, for you to generate something and you know, you cannot easily track where is this image coming from, what context, and all that. Yes, so I talked more about trustworthy cultural AI is achievable for SMEs and lower governance costs, reduced misrepresentation risk, early compliance readiness, stronger trust positioning. And this has been achievable for us thanks again to the Practitioners Hub, where we've looked at ways that we can cut down our expenses and look at how we can start from where we are and build trust, governance, traceability into our product right from the start. Because if we do not do this, what happens is when you scale, when generative AI systems that have scaled, they have scaled giving us what we have today. Just like this morning we were having a discussion and we said we did not want to think about what the future is going to be like. It's scary. You watch videos online and the next thing is AI generated. So what's next for us? So it took us a whole lot of time to, before now, we did not have an idea of how deep we needed to go in terms of, you know, bringing in a whole lot of operationalizing AI governance into our product. We just thought it was just a straightforward thing we build and, you know, it generates and, you know, just the founder mindset where you just feel it's just going to work this way. By the time we had the first, second, third, fourth sessions, we realized we had to collapse everything we've been doing and go back to the drawing board. Because if we get the that's the data part wrong, we've gotten everything all wrong. So we encourage also more of collaborations right now, especially when it comes to, I'll emphasize more on cultural experts. We're looking to partner with those, especially for distinct cultures that are either underrepresented or overrepresented. For instance, you have platforms these days that, you know, train on data, and that data is informed by stereotypes, and you just have to accept it because that's what you've got. So we are bringing in more researchers too that will help us look at this on a larger scale as we think about scaling. At this point in time, we are just getting feedbacks, verbal feedbacks, and also advisory in ways we can structure better and put in more measures so that we do not repeat the same loop that we are trying to solve. All right, so my name is Olugbenga. I forgot to introduce myself. Maybe I was nervous anyway. Yeah, so a two-time founder, came from the edtech sector, pivoted into the creative sector as well. We have a three-man team, and most of our challenges has always been getting expert machine learning guys that are in the creative sector. So if you know what I mean, is they have the subject matter expertise and also have that same technical. So it's difficult to marry both worlds at the same time. So those are some of the challenges we have seen. So thank you very much for listening, and I'm here to be bombarded with questions.
Thank you. Hello. Thank you very much, Olugbenga. We have time for a very quick single question before we move on to our final speaker for this session, but we'll bring you back, obviously, for the discussion. There is a lot of interest in what the primary sources are that you're working with. And then there's a couple of follow-on questions that we might have to save for a discussion in person, but how much of African cultural heritage is actually digitized, and how are you validating the accuracy of the designs that are being created?
Okay, so from our knowledge so far, we have over 3,000 African cultures, and worldwide estimated 10,000. And so the second question, please.
That is how much of African cultural heritage is actually digitized?
So I do not have that number now, but one of the gaps we saw was that we really had distinct cultures that we prompted. We actually carried out our own findings online, and we prompted, and we got the same image you saw online, and we just discovered that those cultures are not represented on these major platforms. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much, Olugbenga.
welcome.
Another big hand. Thank you. Please take a seat, and we'll come back to you later. I'm delighted to hand over to our final speaker for this session, which is Eureka.
I'm going to perch here because I've got notes. I can't. Not one of those amazing people who can speak without notes. Okay, so my name is Eureka Otomo. I'm founder and principal of Tollivar. It's an AI governance advisory working with SMEs, boards, and regulators. So my background is in public international law and environmental law, and I've been part of the program. I'm really, really grateful to all of you for all the continued conversations and advice along the way, and of course the training sessions. So I'm going to talk today about what it means to use AI well, not only to comply with regulations, but to leverage it and its unique capabilities in ways that genuinely improve our lives. I'm going to cover three things. So first, the regulatory landscape, defining how organizations are expected to govern their AI, and the research projects that we've developed as part of the Turing Way program, and something that we're launching also to bring this work directly to SMEs and AI developers, including an offer to all of you. So I started off sort of in the creative industries. That was part of my background, part of my previous role before I left it to focus on AI governance. Globally, regulatory frameworks are now consolidating and laws are being passed at speed. As you no doubt know, the EU AI Act is the world's first comprehensive binding AI regulatory framework. It entered into force in August 24. General purpose AI model obligations, including large language models, took effect in August 2025. And then for high-risk systems on which many of you are working, have the first set of rules that come into effect in August this year. And critically, the Act has extraterritorial reach. So if your AI affects people in the EU, you are within scope regardless of where you are incorporated. And this isn't a European problem for European companies, it's a global compliance problem for any organization with EU market exposure. So in the UK, the government's chosen a pro-innovation, sector-led approach. No single AI Act, but there are existing regulators who've been given powers to apply existing regulations to AI. Okay, so the governance gap. So while effective assurance and responsible AI are easy to say, they're far harder to do. And because there's a proliferation of fast-moving laws, guidelines, and standards, which ones apply really depends on an organization's sector, their use cases, software stack, data flows, and end users and goals. So it's a really complex field. And as we heard at yesterday's summit, there's a gap between regulatory expectation and organizational capability. So these, what the regulators expect is they're written out as if organizations have dedicated legal teams, compliance officers, and technical governance infrastructure. If you look on the right-hand side, this is what most SMEs actually have. So AI development or adoption that's happened rapidly and without governance review, and without regulatory and stakeholder mapping, without training, record-keeping protocols, cross-organizational policies, procurement strategies, or sustainability and ethics reviews. You guys are probably exempted from this, but speaking to a lot of startups, this has been alarming me. So at Tollivar, we saw that we could build a mechanism that translates regulatory expectation, best practice guidance, and sector-specific risks into straightforward, tailored advice that organizations of all sizes can implement with confidence in priority order. And to focus on what we've done at the Turing Way program in particular, so in my academic work, I had long observed these two key challenges. So first, decision-making operationally is often retrogressive, so you're dealing with harm after it occurs. And the cost of aligning decisions operationally with environmental and social goals is prohibitive. There's no reliable alignment technique that organizations can adopt proactively. And so we saw an opportunity to build a proactive governance tool for AI decision-making, not merely compliance software, which already exists on the market, particularly in specific sectors. So what we did was build a structured ethical alignment protocol that organizations can run their proposed actions through, using the UN Sustainable Development Goals as the normative anchor. So this is a broad, really the broadest international consensus on what public good looks like. We also added the OECD AI principles, international human rights frameworks, and so on, to provide complementary layers. And so these are rights-based constraints on AI behavior that map onto emerging regulatory requirements. We thought that if we built a protocol that sits on top of an LLM or AI system, it would have the potential to be a standalone agent so that any organization can add this on and run their proposed decisions through an alignment layer that will identify which relevant regulatory norms and standards apply. It can help map stakeholders and consequences. So thanks very much to the Turing Way for those really, really insightful training sessions we had. And so this would, for example, highlight the most vulnerable groups that any given decision will impact. It can highlight environmental, social, and governance factors, and also really deeply explain the trade-offs between economic, environmental, and social considerations for any given decision. It can also produce a traceable record of reasoning for review and evaluation. And critically, as we do things like introduce AI agents that can act without humans in the loop, this also kind of pinpoints responsibility and liability. It doesn't seek to remove decision-making power from humans. It's designed to assist executives and governing boards rather than replacing judgment. Okay. So we tested this with both a locally hosted, custom-built AI agent and with Claude, a general LLM. using extensive documentation and instructions, some of which will be published as in the case study, alongside a detailed test company profile that uses synthetic data. So we asked many questions, I think 50 questions, including, for example, whether a company, a logistics company, for example, should expand into a corridor that's subject to armed conflict with documented environmental degradation and human rights monitoring. And we tested whether AI considered only commercial variables or reasoned within the full range of international obligations. What we found was that AI agents, hang on, my slides might be out of order now. Hopefully this is okay. So what we found that is that the AI agent delivered specific and non-specific responses and didn't always follow the instructions given in prompts that we inputted. Adding the protocol layer that we created then to the agent, to any agent that had a pre-existing sort of identity, so a commercial agent that existed separately from what we were building, was not very effective. And so one of the scores in the previous slide, we got 13 in terms of accuracy and comprehensiveness, 13 out of 35. Claude, on the other hand, performed really well. So there are lots of other issues using a large language model, like inference cost and security, et cetera, data security. But in the test, it performed very well. It identified, for example, really specific indigenous groups who would be affected in a given area, specific endangered species, their ranking on IUCN red lists. It quantified potential harm and qualified potential harm, including impacts on stakeholders and consequences, suggested mitigations, and made detailed recommendations for mitigating risk, and then also made recommendations for escalating risk to humans, and particularly which kinds of risk should be escalated to which humans at what operational level within an organization. It produces a trade-off analysis, which is perhaps the most valuable aspect of what we made. And this is a traceability schema, which means that each decision that you ask of it within an organization, within the work, generates an envelope that has the proposed action. It sets out the stakeholders with particular attention to the people who have least power, least political power. It identifies the relevant regulations and standards, the trade-offs, potential harms, and then maker logs, and then escalation flags. And this kind of schema, whether you use what we've made or your own, is really important because regulatory frameworks are increasingly requiring not just compliant behavior, but they want evidence of it. So the EU AI Act, for example, the IECO's accountability principle, ISO 42001, the EU Corporate Sustainability Due Diligence Directive, which has just come out, they all require coverage on the same things, which is documentation that survives potential scrutiny by regulators. Key learnings from the project. We should have consulted engineers more from the outset. So the next step is for us to refine the architecture and data set integration, and we plan to develop it as a standalone commercial agent and looking at interoperability and localization as core aspects of the design. Okay, so I want to say something specific about the urgency of this kind of work. We're at the beginning of a shift from AI as a tool that assists human decision-making to AI as an agent that takes decisions and actions on its own. Agentic systems that do these kinds of multi-step tasks are moving from research into production rapidly. And the governance problem then that this surfaces is structural. So currently, most oversight frameworks assume that a human reviews an AI's output before it's acted on, but agentic systems will invert this. And by the time a human sees the result, the context has already been inferred, and decisions are already made insofar as, even if it's giving a human options, those options have been curated. So how we do that is really, really important, and we need to do it critically. So what we're proposing is post hoc alignment, not only as a governance mechanism, but really as a really critical layer that people have to start thinking about, particularly for something like agentic AI. So it operates at the point of output rather than at the point of training. Okay. And it can operate at machine speed, and it produces a record for every outcome. Okay. What we've found is that the research demonstrates that this kind of protocol can substantially improve the governance quality of AI outputs. What we've done is decided to now make the work that we're doing directly available to organizations that need it by supporting them to understand their governance gaps first, and then to tailor this protocol to people's specific needs. If you scan the QR code, we've got limited spaces available for any of you here, and we'll announce it more publicly next week, for anyone who wants to have a full report of their governance gaps. So this is, we'll confirm it within 5 days of you just answering a few questions, a handful of questions on the website. Then you'll have a diagnostic call with me or someone on our team, like half an hour or to an hour, and then you'll get a full governance report with recommended actions. And that's with human and expert input. And this is a usable report for your board or investors and regulators. And we've been working with some organizations already, and they found it extremely helpful. And in return, we will ask to use your anonymized data to help us to further develop, really hone the use cases and the documentation that we need to put together to help develop this protocol and make it more widely available. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Wonderful. Wonderful.